Sebastian, welcome to Keycloak Hour of Code. Great to have you here.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Today's event will be about getting ready to contribute to Keycloak. So it's going to be a fun event. So great to have you here.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
So give it a go. So you want to introduce yourself?
I think there's nothing, or not so much to tell about myself. So I've learned Keycloak, I guess, or learned about Keycloak 10 years ago. So it was a very, very early version, and you told me something that should be, doing the login stuff for my application, and I was wondering why I was downloading 140 megabytes. And that was the beginning, and Keycloak has always been there more or less since then.
And over the time, you contributed to Keycloak, and you're also organizing the Keycloak Dev Day, both this year and the upcoming one in March next year, right?
Yes, that's correct. So, and that will be part of the small amount of slides I've prepared. And in my current day-to-day business, I'm working as a consultant, mostly writing back-end applications based on the JVM.
Nice. So, cool.
That's all, I guess.
And I believe having some knowledge about the JVM is a good something good when you want to also contribute to Keycloak, right?
Yes.
As we will see in today's talk. I see we have about how many people do we currently have here? We have 19 people watching us here today. While Sebastian is showing code and coding, I will help in the chat. If you're in the chat, please introduce yourselves maybe in the chat, saying if you maybe have contributed before to Keycloak or in what areas you're most interested. I will then try to read the questions probably at the end, but maybe also in the middle to Sebastian and being the moderator here today. So that's going to be the plan. Good. So I think the stage is yours, Sebastian. Give it a go. Here are your slides, and I will stay in the background.
Thank you, Alex. So, welcome everybody, and let's start. So, today's episode is named "Get Ready to Contribute Code to Keycloak," and I just want to motivate the session shortly. So, there's been a nice open source conference in October, I guess, and somebody sent me a link to one of the slides shown there, and I will again was thinking about, okay, all this open source software that is used for free, maybe we should give something back, and that is also the motivation for the already mentioned Keycloak Dev Day. So, at least in my personal career, Keycloak has been around for some time and really worked well, also from a consulting perspective. So I really try to get better in contributing stuff and also help others, and created this event this year or next year in March for the first time, having such a pre-conf event, and that's a hackathon, or it's meant to be a hackathon. So everyone is invited that is around in March to be part of this hackathon, and we want to basically create a setup that is useful. But in general, it's based on the assumption that we need contributions, or Keycloak needs contributions, and in general, each contribution is somehow helpful. So maybe that's something you want to comment and write what you think about it. So contributions of a certain kind and not producing more work and stuff like this. So it's really about good contributions, high quality contributions, maybe also smaller contributions that they can easily be integrated in Keycloak. I have to share other thoughts about contributions, but for now, let's start for today. So it's really about creating a basic setup, and probably it's a very very low level and very easy session today, and it's really meant to be looked at. And if you are new to Keycloak maybe or not have contributed already, then this could be helpful to set you up for that hackathon. So I want to start with the prepared story I created, and I use this magic draw magic draw, this markdown file in IntelliJ to just have some kind of story to go through and also click and have things to copy from. So in general, any contribution to Keycloak goes through a pull request, and you have different ways of creating such a pull request. And in general, there's also already a lot of information in Keycloak that is taking care on contributing on documenting necessary steps, details, and stuff like this. So I hope that maybe what I did will go back into Keycloak main, but that's a different discussion. For now, what you need as an absolute base setup is somehow Git installed and configured. You need Java in version 21. There's one special supporting tool to manage JDKs locally. I want to mention it's called SDKman, but any other way works too. I'm maybe just old, but I'm used to use my SSH key to authenticate and use SSH to interact with GitHub, but it's also possible to do this via HTTPS. On a local machine, I just created some environment variables and some shortcut to get my key ready for use. So nothing special. I have a directory where all my local code goes to. I have a directory name for my new Keycloak I want to set up and my GitHub handle. So in general, if you start, you would need to create a GitHub account, and this is guided through right now I'm logged in. So if you would go to another browser, you would probably see the sign up, which is really nice, and you basically can just follow the steps. If you have SSH keys for authentication, you just place them on your settings page, and to just create this possibility to create contributions, I already mentioned you need a fork. So we can go to the Keycloak repository and then to the fork menu, and creating a new fork is basically deciding which owner should be there. And we learn that I already have this fork, so nothing to do for me. The local Git repo that needs to be cloned or is a clone of that fork we created or is already in place. You can go through, basically use IntelliJ functionality and the nice GitHub integration, which works well. It's as I said, for my taste, I like the console, and I like to use Git on the command line. So I go to this directory where I want to place my code, and I basically run this clone command. That means I clone the created fork from my GitHub account and put it into this directory, and afterwards change into this directory, and should have removed that first. So let's remove everything from the last iteration. So again, cloning everything new, which will probably take some time based on the bandwidth my family left for my demo. So while this download is happening in the background, the next part of this step would be that I also configure the origin of my fork, which is pointing to the origin, the originating GitLab repository for Keycloak. And it's also possible to connect other upstreams. So maybe this is useful for collaboration. So just add this remote and also have a look if everything worked well. So we see what I just mentioned. So I'm connected to the upstream for where Keycloak came from, and I also see the fork repository of mine. So that's basically the setup for my local Git repository. Next thing to mention, in my opinion, is that you would need to keep in sync with central Keycloak, and this is happening from time to time because there are other contributions that are changing Keycloak, and the moment we created our fork, we're not getting these changes automatically. But as a matter of taste and for complexity, we will skip this for now. There are several ways doing this. So as we have this local repository, Keycloak source code on the local machine, next thing would be building Keycloak locally. And from the documentation, there are all kinds of build commands mentioned. I choose to run that one because as you can or maybe notice that there are some flags in. So I wanted to basically not waste any time exactly while on a stream. So it's really, in my opinion, the shortest possible way to create a running local Keycloak. In general, there is a lot more to mention if it comes to building Keycloak. So there are, and as I mentioned in the docs, there are many different mentioned build commands. Really nice to have the Maven wrapper on board, so you don't need to take care for Maven yourself. One example for how long this build took, I think it was yesterday, and there are these flags I mentioned. Maybe there are even others I should be aware of. For performance reasons, you might get into the details of activating a build cache, but for today, I just want to have one command and the result as fast as possible. And while it's building, we can maybe go to the next section. So once we have this build completed, we can open IntelliJ with this newly created Keycloak source instance. It's not only recommended, so I really tried before this to just open the Keycloak instance from without any build, and I did not manage to have a running instance in my IDE. So maybe it's possible if you have more patience. And as I understand, it's a recommendation or something that is also in the documentation that you should run a build without having an IDE open. And once this build is complete, you can open the result, and then everything should work fine. So maybe let's just wait. Another thing I prepared for today is I prepared some launch configurations, which will be copied over to the run folder, which is then used by IntelliJ to to be present, so we can also save some time for the demo. So if I now would open this beautiful new location for Keycloak, no. Then we should basically have a running workspace there. So let's see what happens. So as usual, IntelliJ started indexing, and also because I resetted some of my IntelliJ settings, is suggesting me things. But let's just wait a moment. So this happens from time to time, so that it's not recognizing, or maybe just wait and it will recognize Maven. So I can basically help if I give him the hint about rereading the POM XML files. So there are different ways of open this existing project from disk. So I made some good experience with doing what I did, but there's also this import based on the POM files, which might be an alternative. So now you can see that it's recognizing the Maven structure, which is quite impressive. So Keycloak is a really, really big project, and there are many Maven modules that form Keycloak in completeness. So nothing left. So let's just open my story in this new instance. And go to the story that we are already running. And that's what I wrote down here. So when now having a complete workspace in IntelliJ, we can basically just go to the next episode, which is running Keycloak. And as I notice here, or note down here, there are many ways running Keycloak from command line. But as we are in IntelliJ, we want to use the prepared launcher. I want to show you. So come on. So there's the prepared launcher, which is also not yet working. So probably we have that issue. Unfortunately, this worked quite well before, but right now, as usual in demos, it's not working. So I need to go to the module settings and set the SDK. And then the launcher should work. So let's see if it will be completing. So now it's starting up. And we should be able to open it now, but as mentioned, I wanted to show you the launcher first. So the launcher config I copied over is basically using a class named IDE launcher, which was exactly introduced for that purpose, to run Keycloak from the IDE. And I give them some minimal parameters to start Keycloak in so-called developer mode. That's also written to the console, so it's not recommended to use it in production. And that's basically it. So now as it started, we see Keycloak built from source and running locally. And as Keycloak used to do since some versions, it asks me for a temporary admin user and its password. I can create it and then log in using that password. And at least from this perspective, everything looks nice and working. In addition, I can just call the OpenED configuration endpoint to just have another output created by Keycloak, which looks also nice. So, as mentioned in the launch configuration, I can basically add all the known config parameters for Keycloak. Right now, as I said, I just wanted to give the most minimal thing so everyone can follow. The next useful thing, in my opinion, would be to have extensive logging. So if you want to see something from the console when you interact with Keycloak, would be to create lots of log output, and that's basically happening through some environment variable and also additional parameters to the start. So there is this setting as a parameter where I can specify the package name and the output debug level or the log level. So I just mentioned some of the packages and put log level debug in there. And also there's this general setting for the log level of the console. So, and as this is running right now, we already see some of the logs in the console. I can just run maybe a more complicated endpoint, which is a client credentials grant. So without any further interaction, I can just be, okay, Keycloak is demanding that there should be a client or at least valid credentials. I'm not sure what it is in that case, but as we just, we did not configure Keycloak in any way, it's not likely that there will be a client with the name app1. So what I wanted to show was the logs in that case. So there is a lot more log output when it's put to debug, and that's all for this launch config and demonstration of additional configuration given to start dev. So next level maybe is debugging. So if you want to debug Keycloak, we can just run one of the shown configs based on IDE launcher and use the debug button in IntelliJ. Unfortunately, this is not working from Markdown. So if I start Keycloak that way, it's basically the same output. But I can now create a breakpoint, and it should recognize it. And as the demo used this, I create a client credentials, a token based on the client credentials grant. I just go to the token endpoint class. So if I go down here, so process the request, and I will put in my breakpoint, which is somehow recognized, and sometimes it's unfortunately not recognized, but we can just see if things are working by hitting the same or running the same HTTP request. So we see that we are basically in the debugger right now, and we can also just use IntelliJ to look into the request, the form parameters that we sent in, which I already shown in the HTTP client from IntelliJ. And now we could, for example, use this line as some template and create some not very useful header in the HTTP response, just to see that it's working. And if I apply this and proceed, then we will see basically that I added this header from the debugger. Nothing really impressive. So if I'm able to debug, and I can in the Keycloak world, I guess it's very useful to really get into the details to understand how Keycloak is working. And if you want to contribute code, like maybe fix things or add things, I think debugging is your friend. There are other ways for debugging, like for example, starting Quarkus by in the dev mode through Maven, but and then use the remote debugger to connect to it. Works also quite well. But as usual, there's different ways. So right now we could also change code, and one nice thing if we put ourselves to this debugging statement, we can also alter the code and make it available in the running instance without any restart or something like this, and just use IntelliJ magic and recompile this piece of source code. So if we allow the debugger to proceed, we will probably not see anything yet, because we did not, or the current run was not altered. So we need to execute the statement again. Would not even be necessary to go through the debugger, and then we would see that there's this change without restarting the running Keycloak instance. Maybe also quite useful. If in general you want to change code and it's getting more complicated and more classes are involved, it's probably necessary to stop Keycloak, and a lot of changes might be in without any interaction with Maven, for example. Quite nice what the IntelliJ plugin provides. But in general, it should be enough to build through the IDE. The documentation explicitly states that it's not a good idea to run rebuild project, because it probably ends with a not working instance in your IDE. So back to the story. So just to summarize, if you change things in Keycloak, as we see, Keycloak is quite big. It really depends on what you exactly change and what you are intending by this change. So many parts that should not be covered today, but maybe in another episode. So it might be necessary to even rebuild through Maven from time to time. And this is, of course, also really recommended if you have not synced your fork for a long time. Another thing, I guess, is also really useful is that by default, Keycloak is using an H2 database, and it's the file-based variant, which is default. And the current IDE launcher class is putting everything into the target folder, which means that when you use Maven clean, everything gets cleaned up, which can be nice if you don't want to care. But if you want to really configure Keycloak, like having this user we just created or having a client we just created, I need to relaunch it. Then you must take care of this target folder. As an alternative, you can also configure the KC home dir setting and make this directory basically point to somewhere else. So you can also use Maven to rerun and hopefully keep the data you created via the admin UI. If you would go on in this direction, and persistence there's a lot more to say when it comes to Keycloak, because there are of course database flavors supported. So if you really want to work with an external database and make sure all the data is handled, or maybe just doing some contribution to the database part of Keycloak, then it's probably a good idea to have an external Postgres running somewhere. But this is also not free, of course, so you need something like Docker or Podman or whatever. While we're talking about these clients, users, and all the other data that is created in Keycloak, if you would have these persistence in place, this is maybe one way. Maybe it's also a good idea to do some automation for this configuration, especially if it comes to changes. So you probably don't want to basically fiddle around manually and create complex situations. But I already heard there's a new test framework, but that's also maybe worth another session. If you want to run a specific Keycloak version, like maybe from a bug report, somebody is telling, okay, version 2601 is behaving in a specific way, and you really want to go to that point in time and use the exact source code for that version, then you can check out tags. But you need to sync them first. So when you have a fork and sync that fork, tags are not included. Once checking out a tag, mean that you basically need to build and run as shown before. As there's a lot more to say when it comes to an IDE, and especially IntelliJ is full of features. I think this is worth also another session, and there's a lot of things written about it. For the demo of today, I think I will finish soon. So there's additional things I really would like to see as such a demo. For example, running the admin UI part in dev mode, and really be able to do changes to the UI and without any hassle and building and restarting, which is possible. So I just wrote down some other ideas for sessions and things I wanted to go into the details with. So thank you, and I guess we can now go to the summary and to the end of this session. So I really would like to hear your feedback. As said earlier, this is just meant as a really, really basic first step, and also as some small intro people can use if they want to be part of the Keycloak Dev Day hackathon, or maybe there will be other hackathons on Keycloak. And I really like to hear your feedback, so put them in the chat, or you can also find me on the CNCF Slack. But the next question would be, should there be another episode, maybe on topics like UI development and contributing to the UI parts of Keycloak? Or I think there are lots of topics I can think about. And last questions for me would be how these contribution related knowledge could be made available and maintainable. I said there's a lot of things already in Keycloak, and maybe it's there are ideas, or you have ideas how this should be rearranged to be even more useful. Thank you. That's all I prepared for today, and I really like to hear your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. What a great presentation. Thanks a lot for sharing this with this audience. So we saw today how you check out Keycloak from a Git repository, you build it locally and start it up. And once you start it up, you can use it using your browser, interact with it, maybe test the very latest version of Keycloak. And then we also saw how to debug it. Yeah, great.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks for preparing all that. So there was one question here from, let's see if I use this tool here correctly. Yeah, from Shinbom Pio. Sorry if I'm doing this name wrong here. So he's asking, is there a GitHub repository of the documents that you use for this session?
Yes, there is, but I really want to check twice if it's okay for everyone to have it published. So maybe we can talk about it. And I would be happy to share them, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's see. I think that's 2 of us who wants to share it. So there should be no one blocking that one. I think it would be a good idea to share it until this documentation has been updated in the main repository. I believe there are lots of readme.md files or testmd files around the Keycloak main repository that people can use for now. And I hope that we will update them over time a bit more.
Yep.
So that's what you're saying, at readme.md in the root folder, a contributing MD in the root folder, a PR checklist MD in the root folder. Okay, that's how to read it, right?
Yes, and there's even some, yeah. So
and even the links
there's
work.
really a lot of things already in there, and it's really really worth and reading everything. But at least for me, consuming it all at once, I think we already talked about having this task-based interaction, not reading through a very long manual. So let's find out how this could be useful.
Yeah, that sounds very promising. Yeah. So Alexei is sharing that UI development is the one he's interested in. Yeah, UI is also sometimes a miracle for me because I'm more of a Java backend guy. I recently learned how to do that, and I'm quite sure we will share it soon, how to do that.
Yeah. yeah, that's quite an evolution when you look into how Keycloak had managed UI. So it's really interesting.
So then there's a question from Jorge. Oh, hopefully I'm butchering names again. How long does it usually take for a PR to be reviewed? So maybe you want to answer that, Sebastian?
No, my last PRs were quite awful in terms of incompleteness, or I just wanted to basically discuss things, and it was, I was not good when it comes to useful PRs, so I should have probably discussed beforehand without a PR.
Yeah. So the thing is, well, I'm one of the maintainers of Keycloak. Basically, all the maintainers get a notification once you open a PR. At the moment, we don't have a service level objective for PRs. We only have a service level objective for any bugs that you open, that we are looking after those in a timely manner. If there are small PRs and if they have an issue connected to them, then it's usually, well, you might get the simpler and the smaller the PR is, the more straightforward and faster you will get a reply to that. If it's a bigger one, it makes usually sense to first discuss the idea. That's something you also indicated. And to get feedback from maintainers is then probably creating a GitHub issue first, or maybe asking on the mailing list first. Creating a GitHub discussion, get people upvoting your issue, get people contributing ideas to your idea, and then starting to work on the pull request if it's a bigger pull request. If it's just a typo, go ahead and create a pull request. Right. Olivier is asking if you're about to share the slides. Yeah, okay. So they will be shared alongside with the code probably. Next question: what would be the procedure if some checks are failing after the PR has been raised? Who would be the first point of contact? You want to answer that one, or should I give it a go?
Oh, I think we had some time where tests that are failing not necessarily mean that there's something wrong. So it could be just an issue of the test for sure, but you should test locally and yeah, not an easy topic. Maybe also some sessions.
Yeah. So from a maintainer's point of view, when you create a pull request that either fixes a bug or creates a new feature, we'd love to see a test there, especially if you're a first-time contributor. Keycloak maintainers or other experienced Keycloak contributors might help you with that test. It's usually a good idea to first open your pull request as a draft pull request, because, well, that's like a different button in the GitHub UI to say. And once you open it as a draft PR, it's clear that you're still working on it. So people wouldn't fall over it and say, okay, it's not compiling, this is wrong, but you're still working on it. And while it's in draft mode, also the maintainers won't get notifications by email, which is keeping the noise down for the maintainers a bit. And while it's in draft mode, you can add then more commits. Also, actually running all the tests locally on your machine, it takes ages. And if you create a draft pull request, you will benefit from the GitHub runners, which will run the tests in parallel. So even if maybe you changed some code, did a manual test, maybe locally, to see that you think it should be probably all right, but you just change and then create a draft pull request and let GitHub give you the feedback if there may be some failing tests. That's usually okay, especially if it's a draft pull request. That will keep GitHub from sending out notifications to the maintainers. that's perfectly acceptable and probably the way to go. So there's a question, will there be probably the monthly call where we can discuss problems which we face? Let's see. Maybe we can have something similar like this on a Keycloak Hour of Code. So we have an SRE working group with all things that site reliability engineers are interested in, and we are trying to set up a monthly call for that as well. We have a special interest group for everything OAuth and evolving. They have a monthly or even more often call, I believe. Maybe a monthly call plus breakouts. So it's then the thing how many people turn up. So it was great to see that about 30 to 35 people turned up today and that are interested in the topic. We might do a second or third one on this and make sure that we probably record it. If people continue to show up, then we might have like an Ask Me Anything about pull requests and specific topics. In the meantime, with a lot of Keycloak maintainers and also Keycloak contributors being distributed around the world, let's try the best we can do and doing this asynchronously. But I also see the need for sometimes doing things synchronously. Let's see. So the answer is definite maybe. Right. So that seems to be the end of the questions. And we still have 50 minutes to go. I might have some questions that came up when I was listening to. So you said you can connect to another database. Could you show where you want to specify that in your maybe your run configuration, how you would configure that?
So it's as I said, you would go to all the config settings and show database, and then you need to specify all the necessary options like database type. So the vendor would be Postgres.
Can you zoom in a bit? It's a bit small.
Sorry. Yeah. So first important thing would be to say which database type you want to use. So assume it's Postgres, then you would specify DB Postgres. And then I think you need these. So there are defaults. You could use the complete JDBC URL for your database, or you can specify, I think it would be the host and the database name, username and password, and then you are fine. So it should be 5 parameters, and you would place them inside the launch config. So there's these place I would then start using DB, Postgres, and so on.
Yeah. And I think if you said you could use Docker for that, or maybe you have it locally installed. I have to say I usually use Podman, which is
Podman is
Docker.
Also good.
And then the nice thing is that if you're running it on an external database, it's a bit simpler to connect to that database and also inspect the database.
Yes.
A bit simpler compared to the H2 database.
Until someday I managed to connect to this local H2 database, I was failing.
Yeah, you can add lots of other parameters to that, but yes, it's possible. But Postgres running it externally, it's a lot simpler there.
Yeah.
And then it also is more persistent if you rerun it, which is also nice.
Yeah. As said, so if you really go and want to see the schema and maybe also, I think database optimization might be a dedicated topic, and then this is it's not possible without having the concrete database product.
You also showed us how to modify the code at runtime. Yeah, well, Are there any limits to it that we should be aware of?
It's probably limited to one code unit. I would say so. If things are getting complicated, then it basically fails to replace the code in the running JVM. But I'm not sure on which exact limitation.
I think it's usually when you change a signature of a method or add a new field to a class. Those
two places are involved. So if there's another class using that method.
Yeah, but I think it will fail to replace it once the method changes. It will just hot code replacement failed. That's, I think, the error message you usually see there. And then these changes will be reflected once you, while you're in the debug session. And then if you then restart Keycloak, you might end up in a situation that that you had a hot code replacement that worked while it was running. But if you then restart Keycloak, your changes will be gone, because then Keycloak will pick up these changes again from a jar file that was built earlier from Maven.
Yes.
So it's like you do a change, you do a hot code replacement that works, and then you decide to restart Keycloak. But when you restart Keycloak, you might be tempted to restart rerun Maven first if you end up in that situation.
I wasn't able to reproduce that one because I remember it, but I think it depends on the area of code. So most things are recognized by the IDE. There's a change, it rebuilds, and you see it in the console. So in case of this token endpoint, it was not working. So the code I changed during doing debugging with hot code replacement was also picked up afterwards.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, people should be aware, if it's not working, you might be skipping, you might need to run Maven again.
Yes.
And it depends on the area of code you're changing. Yeah, those were the things that that came up to my mind when listening to your presentation. Was great to hear. We had wondering what are the other topics we wanted to cover, right? So there was one question, and please add in the chat the other topics you want to have covered here. One question was to how to do UI development. But maybe you have other ideas or things you have been struggling in the past with, or maybe even you want to share with us the kind of change you currently have in mind. If it's more like debugging Keycloak to find a bug, or is it fixing a bug?
As you said, I really want to try to find small changes to really not So I have a family. I have kids. I have this plenty other things that cost time. So creating a huge PR, and I did this in the past, which then fail or will not go anywhere. I think I would try with smaller amounts of changes, and also the documentation is something that I personally like to invest time to help others. But you asked for topics, so I think testing is something I personally struggled a lot with when it comes to Keycloak. So there's these Killian tests. There's a small piece of documentation that is describing how Keycloak wants to deal with unit testing. There's these really awesome Git repository for performance testing that I guess you initiated or take a lot of time into it. Yeah, adopted it. And in general, testing I think is a great thing. And somebody already mentioned this new test framework, but I think it's focusing on testing extensions or extension development. I'm not sure. So testing is on my mind, definitely.
Yeah, this new testing framework, I think there's a blog post on the Keycloak blog. So if anybody, I can put that into the note as well. So it's been called Introducing the New Test Framework. I think that's the most recent entry there. And it's the original design is to test Keycloak. But we might even come to a point where we are able to run Keycloak tests in parallel, which will be a nice thing for both running things locally and on GitHub Actions. But it also will be better, or will improve the user experience for people developing extensions. Yeah, I know that we have Nico on the call, but maybe I can persuade him to give a talk on how to develop extensions. I know we had a talk on how to do extensions on the KeyConf in Vienna. Wasn't there one?
Yes, from Garth. And
from Garth, yes.
Yeah.
Let's post this link here as well.
Yeah, extension development and also UI extension development would be topics I think worth going into it. But in my opinion, these might be even parallel tracks, because it's really a different audience. And in my opinion, I want to really try to contribute to Keycloak itself. And there is a use for extensions for sure, and Keycloak is doing great providing this extension mechanism in all areas. So really a huge topic probably, but for now I would first go for topics that like all the integrations Keycloak provides, like external interfaces and protocols. There could be one regarding federation. We already talked about persistence. Maybe there's this LDAP thing worth mentioning, and really going into details and developing of this LDAP area.
Okay. Yeah, cool. But let's wrap up here. It sounds like that probably UI, or how to run the UI for development locally, might be the next thing to show. Looking forward to it here on the stream. Thank you very much for all the questions, and especially to you, Sebastian, for preparing all this demo here. Thank you very much. Yeah, and then see you around next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.